right, hey everybody, welcome. Thank you all for coming. So I'm Nikki Santoro. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at IMDb. On behalf of IMDb Pro, I want to welcome you to a discussion with the filmmaker and cast of the American Society of Magical Negroes here at the Acura House of Energy. So I was lucky enough to see this film at the premiere, and it was fantastic, and all of our team is raving. We're thrilled to have the group here for our panel. So this panel is really part of IMDb Pro's ongoing effort to help entertainment professionals showcase their work, connect with each other, and to advance their careers. Big shout out to Acura, who's hosting us in their beautiful space today. Acura has been lifting up independent artists and diverse voices for more than 14 years as official partner of Sundance. That mission is on full display here in the 40th anniversary of the Sundance Film Festival. Today's panel is going to be moderated by IMDb video producer and my friend Trey Wesley. Trey is a talented writer, producer, and interviewer, and you guys are going to be in great hands. So, Trey, take it away.
Thank you so much, Nikki. How's everyone feeling on this beautiful Sunday? You feeling good? Yeah, everyone looks so good. The energy in here is great, and I can't wait to get started. I'm up here with some incredible talent, the director and cast of the American Society of Magical Negroes. So let's get started with the intro. Sitting next to me is the director, writer, and producer, Kobi Libii. Round of applause, yeah. Yes. Playing the role of Aaron, we have Justice Smith. Yeah. And the comedy legend over here, playing the role of Roger, Mr. David Allen Grier. You know, your film premiered Friday, so I just got to do a quick gut check with everyone. How are we all feeling right now?
Hot as man. It's like I'm in my grandma's house. Can y'all turn the heat down?
I did say it was warm. I did say that, David. I did. But other than being hot, how are we feeling? The world has seen it, you know? So far, Kobi, let's start with you. How are you feeling?
Well, we're slowly taking our clothes off up here. So the nature of this panel just changed. I'm feeling great. I mean, it's it's a privilege to be up here with a film and to get to tell your story and to hang out with these guys and talk about it. And I love audience. That's part of what's fun about coming to a festival like this is you get a bunch of people who, beyond just wanting to see films, want to take time out of the day to hear artists talk about those films, and that's the kind of respect for storytelling that's it's just a beautiful community to be part of. So we're happy to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Justice or David, you want to add anything to that? Just how are you feeling?
Great. I mean, it's been, for me, a little anxiety and anticipation because there was so much conversation around the film, yet I knew that no one had seen the film, but yet they all wanted to talk about what they thought the film was going to be, yet. So now we can talk with people who actually saw it.
Yes. All right.
Yeah,
No, go.
no, I don't have to say anything.
No, please say it. Please.
I just really love the Sundance people. I haven't experienced fans like these, like people who are incredibly thoughtful about what they're watching, who love film and know how to analyze film and analyze character and give you compliments about the work. I'm having a blast doing press for something I'm so passionate about and seeing how that passion. I have a chest cold. Sorry.
He's
how
emotional.
that passion transfers over, yeah, it's an exchange of passion between me and the viewer.
Yeah. Energy, exchange of energy.
Exchange of energy.
Beyonce said that in her Renaissance film. It's like the exchange of energy,
Yes.
right? Who remembers
Yes.
that line?
I
You
do.
know.
I do.
We are Beyonce.
We are.
Yeah.
This is the Renaissance. So when I saw the name of the film, I was immediately curious about it for obvious reasons. But after seeing the film, I think there was a deeper message at play here. So Kobi, for anyone who doesn't know what the film is about, can you just quickly break it down for us?
Yeah, sure. So it all starts with the magical Negro trope, and just to define that, it's a pretty film literate audience, but I like to sort of say it in my own terms anyway. I think of the magical Negro as a black supporting character who doesn't have his or her own internal life. They're just there to support the white protagonist's journey, and the film is a critique of that. It's a satire, and it imagines that being a magical Negro is just a real job you can go get. but it's a secret underground society, a world beneath our world where these black people use literal magical powers to support these white clients. And it's a satire that attacks the trope, but is also a very fun sort of magical world beneath our world where we can just play and think about some of the fantastical things that black people have to do to survive in America. And it's also, for me, a way to explore some of the defense mechanisms that I was taught about how to respond to racism and how to respond to white people and keep myself safe in America. And at its heart, it's also a love story about finding a person and finding people who look at you as a full three-dimensional person in a world and a culture that would rather reduce you to a stereotype. So that's a movie.
Right on. Yes, absolutely.
I want to know who here has seen the movie.
Yeah, that's helpful too. Yeah.
Big
Okay,
hands.
okay.
Don't be
So
shy.
like-
Wave them. Yeah. All right.
Like
okay.
a quarter of the house, maybe something like that.
All right.
And
Go
who here
see
is happy with what they saw?
All right. That's
No one raised their hand.
dangerous question.
We're getting
What
into
are
it.
you doing?
I have a follow-up question. Who here has not seen the movie and is still pissed off? There you go.
Good. Yeah.
Those are my people right there.
We dedicate this panel to you. Yeah. Oh,
All
great.
right.
Oh, great.
Justice and David, I'm just curious, how did Kobi pitch you on this project? You know, when he came up to you and pitched this, what were you thinking about? What sold you on this?
So I originally became a part of this during the Sundance Labs. Kobi reached out to my team and asked if I could fly out and workshop the script with him. And I read the script and I loved it. I was a little too young for it at the time, but it was the first time I'd seen my racial experience reflected accurately. And when I met Kobi, I was like, oh, this man is a spitting image of me. I was like, that makes sense why we have the same racial experience.
Twins.
And there's
Twinsies, yeah.
fully. And there's something, but you know what? It's so tragic that I had never experienced the liberation of working with someone who looks like you. You know, there's a shorthand that you can have with them. You know, that it just frees you up to like explore and play. And I'm really proud of my performance in this film, but I owe it all to Kobi because of how comfortable and free he made me feel. Not just because he's an incredible director, but because he understands me at a deeper level. You know, that it's I want to say it's so rare, but I think it's more rare for people of color to experience that. Like, wow, I don't have to explain myself. You know, I can just be, and you get it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Mr. David, what about you?
It's the usual path. You know, my managers called me. They said they had the script they wanted me to read. They thought it was really good. Take a look. Give us your thoughts. So I read the script. I really liked it, but I called them immediately and asked if the writer-director were black, just because at this point in my life, man, I've been acting professionally for 40 years. And had he told me, well, this is a first-time director like Kobi, and this is a young white director, I know I would have said no, just because I'm tired, man. Yeah. And, you know, I'm serious. Yeah. And I'm not, I just would not have wanted to anticipate explaining myself to this artist. You know, someone else will be better. So that was really the motivating thing for me. And also, I'm 67. I really want to reach back and work with young artists of color, different voices, different points of view. This was quirky. And you can see by the way we're rolling it out, nobody is going to get all of it. Some people will get some of it. And to promote the film and keep the mystery intact, you can't tell all of it. So it really, we're asking you guys to trust us, and you may know me or Justice, but you know, it's an act of faith. But it was a wonderful experience. It really was. It was great. I mean, it was an amazing role, and I really had a ball.
That's such a joy to hear. You know, Kobi, we spoke briefly about coming from the Midwest and this story being rooted in personal experiences. What was it like, though, actually writing the script? Was it cathartic in some way?
Yeah, in cathartic, also troubling, I would say, because the the origin story I always talk about this film is that I thought it would be a sketch, because a society of magical black people, American Society of Magical Negroes, taking down the trope. Often something like that wants to be about 2.5 minutes, and so I sat down to sort of make it for that format. And the way I describe what happened is I sort of came up for air a couple hours later, and sat back from my desk and was sort of like, what am I working on? Because I realized that I was processing something much more personal than attacking the trope. And what I believe I was exploring, and what I believe the film is ultimately about, is this very particular defense mechanism that I was taught as a black man about how to survive America, which is to make powerful white people comfortable. And the most explicit example of this that's tangible to a lot of black folks is when my dad sat me down as a kid and said, this is how you act around the police to stay alive. You don't worry about your pride. You don't worry about these other things. You just keep yourself safe. You're nice. You're polite. You say, sir. You do all these things. And I believe that I personally, and this is my particular black experience, not anybody else's necessarily, overlearned those lessons, right? And I believe that it influenced the way I move through the world and the way I relate to white people and the way I take up space. And in that way, I'm sitting here sort of attacking these magical Negro tropes. Oh, these black people who are only focused on white people and hyper focused on white comfort, and I find myself identifying with them in this very troubling way, right? So I say it's cathartic, but it was also a very troubling and really quite embarrassing thing to see in myself through the process of writing this art. And ultimately, what part of what I'm interested in with this film is. Both to sort of forgive myself for having overlearned that lesson, offer that same sort of grace to other black people or other people of color who might have overlearned that kind of lesson too. But in many ways, more importantly, to shift the blame, right? Because it's not my fault that my dad had to teach me that. It's structural racism's fault that we were coerced into needing those kinds of defense mechanisms to navigate this country. And when we talk about the sort of peculiar bounces of the ball that racism creates, me having shame about these things that I'm doing moving through the world, which are all downstream of these absolutely destructive power structures, to me that is, there's something so instructive and also not often talked about with regard to racism in attacking those structural, in highlighting those aspects of the structural problem. So that's one of the things that happened for me personally in writing this, and that I hope will connect with a broader audience too.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I can just, round of applause for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can just imagine how liberating that felt for you during that journey, being brutally honest with yourself, just relating to that character. It's like, wait, maybe I have some unlearning to do a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it's like I wish it were more like, oh my God, I feel so good now that this is off my chest, But it's like
I'm forever changed.
Yeah, forever, now I'm free, But like that, I read this study once about like fault location at work, where it's like that I think it was about women. I don't think it was about black people, but it was that when something goes wrong at work, women are more likely to be like, oh, it was my fault. And like men are more likely to be like, well, that was Doug's fault. I wasn't set up for success, right? And I feel like there's a little bit of that even in me too, right? Where it's like, even in knowing intellectually the thing I just articulated, right? This is not my fault. It's the system's fault, right? It's not my personal failing. It's not my personal shortcoming. It's not it's not a failing of the older, wise black people who taught me these lessons in really good faith and from a real place of love. I still have shame about it, and I still have embarrassment about it. And to me, there's something racialized even about that aspect of it.
It's deep. It's a deep unlearning. It's not overnight.
It's some insidious.
Yeah.
Yes. Justice, you mentioned that the character of Aaron has helped you explore things about yourself through the preparation work. Can you share a little bit about what that experience was like? Maybe what did you learn about yourself through that process of finding Aaron?
That I make a lot of space for white people, and I should do less of that. Kobi really just said everything that I feel, and that's why I love working with Kobi, is because I identify with him so much, and he just is way more eloquent than I am. But I remember there's this really powerful monologue that Kobi wrote towards the end of the film that I didn't really have to do much preparation for. I just had to learn the words, and learning the words was incredibly easy because I was speaking my truth. Yeah. There was nothing unfamiliar about playing this character. My ego as an actor wants to be like, oh, I did such a transformation, and I really honed my craft doing this, but I set out to be an actor to experience catharsis, and this movie was like a return to that original motivation of I learned so much about myself. I feel like I'm a more unapologetic person now. I feel like I have a right to exist, which that is such a hard lesson to learn. But yeah, I am forever changed, and I'm waiting for American society too, so I can extend that growth.
Yeah, and I was going to ask about that because I think that monologue at the end really sells the message of the film. Like when I heard that, I got it. And I was so proud of Aaron for finally reaching that point, and it took some time to get there. I'm just curious, behind the scenes, Gems, on set, working with Kobi, you said you didn't have to do a lot of preparation work, but when you were saying it, afterwards, did you kind of have to reset for a bit, or were you and Kobi kind of going back and forth?
During that monologue?
Yeah, during that monologue.
So I went in, I really didn't know what was going to happen. I just rode the wave of the scene, and it was really emotional. I got emotional a couple of times, and Kobi would come over, and his face was like a blubbering mess, and he'd be like, maybe slow down on this part, and
This is a lie. I never cried. I didn't cry one time. It was very humid. It was very humid that day.
I didn't. Some roles you play, you want to stay in that feeling, you want to stay in that emotion while you're shooting it, and that scene is also so full of humor that I was I have to let it go after cut. Every single take, I have to let it go after cut. And so I would immediately go into joking around with the fellow cast, and who's incredibly hilarious, Michaela Watkins and Drew Tarver, I almost felt a little bit like a sociopath because I would be so intensely angry and emotional, and then I'd be like, that was fun, you guys, right? Wasn't that fun? But for some reason I work well like that. I work well in the quick switch, the tap in and tap out. But it's a testament to Kobi's writing that I didn't really have to do much.
But in some ways too, that tapping out, it's also the part of the whole texture of the piece, right? This subject matter, the stuff I was just talking about, right? It's a comedy, by the way, right. Right? But the texture of what I'm talking about, there's obviously real pain and real trauma and real sadness here, but in the exact same way that Justice is talking about, now we need to come out of it and take a break. The only way I could write about this was with humor. The only way I could look at these parts of myself and look at this shame and confront some of this stuff was with the sort of the joy of play as something that gave me that sort of let the steam off the kettle a little bit, So in some ways, I think it's a beautiful metaphor for just in your own process of the broader texture of the film of this real intensity, but then needing to play around to make that intensity bearable,
Yeah.
True, yeah.
And I want to just stay on that comedy for a bit. David, we're going to come back to this film, but you most recently starred in The Color Purple, by the way, which is incredible, But I just got to give a shout out because I remember Mr. David Allen Grier from this OG sketch comedy show, In Living Color. Another round of applause for that one. I would love if you can complete this prompt for me. I love comedy because...
Well, it gives me a pass because what Justice was talking about, and Kobi, how they've negotiate racially and culturally in this environment, I've used comedy, and I still do. I get away with saying so much truth and followed up by, I'm with you, man. I'm just kidding. So, but I do want to comment that, I know my status and my position in this industry. So when working with a first-time director, one of the things I was trying to do, unbeknownst to Kobi, is show him the respect. Tell him how it's supposed to be. Because, I've been in those environments when it wasn't really like that. And so, he would ask me, he would say, what do you think, or should I rewrite this? And I was like, your words are great. They're fine.
David Allen Grier is one of the most world-class improvisers you're ever going to meet. And I can't tell you.
Yes.
And I can't tell you how many times I asked this man. I was like, take one on your own. I wrote some words. Take one on your own. And the respect this man had for the text that I, as a young black man, wrote. He almost never took me up on it, even though he's a virtuosic improviser, and it was so respectful of my text, David.
But I would have. I would
yeah.
have if I thought it would have made it better.
Yeah.
I would have. I'm not gonna talk some bull.
Yeah.
No, I would have. But if
that.
it's good, I wanted to, big you up and let you know that.
Yeah.
That's about it. I forgot the question.
Oh, you answered it. That was perfect. But also just to piggyback off of that, Kobi has described the role of Roger that you played, Mr. Grier, as demanding. And he has these absurd views of the world. I'm just curious, was it challenging to kind of relate to Roger, to find your way to him as a character?
No, because I was confronted with Rogers in my life as a young guy. I'm really emotional because I'm thinking about all the stuff, these memories. So you stick with me. I remember my parents, my grandmother who was born in 1900, my great-grandmother who was biracial. And so I was told all of these things. When your loved ones and your family, they give you these survival methods, it's because they want you home. They want you alive first because they love you. So I never wanted to play Roger as this buffoon or caricature. No, he was a corporate man who believed in this company. And I saw in Justice's character, which is Aaron, what is it? Aaron. Because you were saying all kind of crazy. Anyway, I see a lot of himself in Justice's character. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? I do. And so it's kind of like this. If you ask a devout Christian, if there's a God, why are there all these wars and disease and famine? And the answer I've gotten a lot of times is, well, imagine if there weren't no God. Well, that's what Roger would say if asked, well, this magical society of Negroes, why are we still stuck in this mire of racism and violence and retribution? I know he would say, well, imagine if we weren't here. So he believes in what he's doing. And because I think he was a lot like him when he was recruited. It doesn't mean that's the path that he will choose, but it's an option. That's what it is.
And I love this, because it's so easy to, there's an integrity that David brought to the role. That, you hear the integrity that he's bringing to that point of view and how much respect he has for it, which is beautiful. It's just acting, but part of what it is he's saying, it's this generational thing where it's like the generation that came before us, they had to survive a different world than we had to survive. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for the people who taught me these lessons, which were, maladaptive and ultimately destructive for me, I think. But I do respect them, and I have some humility about my own. Well, that was the wrong lesson, right? Because I didn't have to, I didn't have to deal with the insane things, you know, I hear my father talking about having to deal with, you know, and you know, David, your grandma, and you know.
I'll tell the story if you want.
Yeah,
Please.
please, yeah.
All right. You guys gotta give me a moment. Okay, so my grandmother's sister, my grand aunt, her name was Ethel, Aunt Ethel. Aunt Ethel was my favorite aunt. She always played with me. She always spoke to me as a child, but as an equal. You know, those kind of older folks, she didn't baby talk me. Well, my grandmother would tell me this story. When Aunt Ethel was a young woman, it's gotta be 1930, Mississippi, Alabama. She'd gotten dressed up in her Sunday best and gotten her hair done because she was going to go and visit friends a few towns over. And so she got on the bus to travel there. But as the bus filled up, at one point the bus driver pulled over in the middle of nowhere and told her she had to give up her seat for these white folks. And of course she tried to protest. She said, well, where am I gonna go? You can't just drop me off in the middle of nowhere. And he said, you can ride underneath the bus with the luggage. And so they put her under there. So when they got to their destination, they left her there for hours. And she became hysterical. She kicked, she banged, she screamed, she pleaded, until finally this group of white men, drivers and workers there, let her out, laughing at her. Now, this is a story that was told to me over and over as a kid. Now, I was really little, and when I was really little, I would lie in bed with my grandmother, and it always began with, Grandma, tell me about when you were a little girl. So when I was a little child, it was like Little House on the Prairie. It was amazing. I loved these stories, but I didn't understand the pain behind all these stories. And when I would ask her to tell me that story again and again as I got older and older, that story changed. And I realized the pain in that story. So when my character's telling him, how did you make it? And I tell him my story. I know those stories. They're part of my DNA. So it was very easy to bring that to life. And I'll tell you something else. What I just told you is not unique to me. It's not unique to my family. So many black people and black families have similar stories. I could go on, but that is at the root of my character, and that's nothing I had to study. It's just there. And so that's kind of what I was trying to portray and bring across to Justice. Justice's character, rather. It's not Justice. Aaron. Through my portrayal, that's all. So.
And yeah, give me
Yes,
yeah.
please. Please.
And this movie, so much of this movie is about protagonism. So who's the hero? Whose story is the one we center? And whose story is the one we don't tell? And one of the things I'm obsessed with about Black history is that we're still really uncomfortable centering and celebrating a story like the story of your great aunt. We'd rather celebrate Rosa Parks, who resisted and got to look like the hero because she didn't go under the bus, as opposed to recognizing the absolute, the strength, the will, the grit that it took to get through that, to be under that bus. I can't even imagine, you know. And to me, that's heroism, you know. And if I'm out here as a Black storyteller, it's like, whose story do I want to center? Do I want to center another story about a Black person overcoming racism in America? Congratulations, we've told that story. We haven't respected, I don't think, though, the legacy of people like that who just had to endure, because there's such heroism in enduring the rigors that this country has put Black people through. And so I'm
in survival.
I just want to put I want to put a button on it. You know, when I was a little boy, I would ask my grandmother, well, why didn't Aunt Ethel fight back? She never told me they would lynch her.
Yeah, right.
but it was obvious.
Yeah.
As I got older, I came to that conclusion. It was obvious.
Yeah.
She couldn't fight back.
Yep.
So the DNA of all that pain, you bottle it up, it comes with us. And so the next generation, you pass it down. Even though you try not to, you know, even though we've accomplished great things, it's still there. And at times it gets triggered. And it comes out in ways that we're not even aware of, in situations that we're not even aware of.
And
that's our legacy. That is what we need to keep talking about, to purge in a healthy way. Yet I want to keep these. You know, I haven't told that story in decades. It's this movie that triggered all that. So when we talk about it, I'm re-triggered, but it's good. It's good. It's good.
It's good. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. I'm trying not to cry myself. I'm just taking a deep breath. You know,
It's a comedy.
it's a comedy. It's a comedy.
It
It's
is
funny. It's a funny
funny.
film.
So, I
It's
mean,
funny as hell, y'all.
Yeah.
It is very funny.
I mean, so like, let's just switch gears a little bit, like, because it is a comedy, right? No, but you know, I want to have a little fun and do some rounds of burning questions, if that's okay. Burning questions are very fun, rapidish kind of questions, and it's actually a series on IMDb. You can find it on our YouTube channel, and it's really fun. Justice, we'll start with you. What was your favorite day on set, and why?
Oh, every day. I mean, that's a diplomatic answer.
right,
But
the real
this was one of the, if not the best experiences I've ever had on a film set because of everything I named before, because of working with this man right here, but also because we shot in LA, where I live, and so I got to sleep in my own bed every night. That was also great. But I just love the cast. I love the crew. It was such a well-oiled machine. Usually films don't go that smoothly. It had such great leadership. I loved the character. I loved the story. It just was perfect in all ways. And now it is my reference point for what all films, all experiences need to look like for me.
Absolutely.
Moving forward.
Absolutely. You know, Mr. Grier, I know you probably improv the most on set. I just want to hear about some of those jokes. Like, what was just a day on set that y'all just lost it and could not keep it together?
It was all probably between I would tease Justice because, you know, he's a method actor and he got to get all prepared and So I'm gonna do my Justice. I'm gonna do my Justice impression. Okay, guys. Okay, are we? Is this the scene where I'm teleporting? All right, okay. Hold on. Can I get an orange? Can I get an orange? Wait, that's. I just wanna. All right, okay. All right, I'm ready. Can I go to the bathroom? Okay.
That is so true. And I'm ashamed to admit it.
No, but I loved working on it. And one of the things, you know what this reminded me of? I remember one time on the set, Keenan Ivory Wayans, he told us, he said, I want you guys to look around this room. Because we were having a ball, man. We were hit out the box, man. That was killing it. And he said, you got to remember this memory because you may never be in a room in which writers, creators, producers, directors were not only probably 80-90% black, but we were all co-conspirators, you know. You didn't have to waste this time. I can't tell you how much time in my career I've wasted explaining, trying to teach, trying to rewrite or figure out a way that I could negotiate this bullshit they gave me and keep my soul intact. So this was a time where we could put all our energy into this creation.
Exchange of energy, right? We talked about that. I just have to ask this question. When's a time in your life and career that maybe you felt magical? We'll start with you.
You know, it's the best part about being a director is everybody else does everything, and I mean it's verbal, right? You know, it's like the camera operators are operating the cameras, the editors pressing the editing button, these guys are saying the words out loud. I just sort of sit and say things to people, right? And there's a quality of magic to that, which is you just are sort of sitting there and you watch. I mean, you see how, you know, wildly charismatic these people are, and those of you who've seen the film, you know what they're like. I just watched that for a month while we were shooting, you know what I mean? And it does feel magical to just watch it happen in front of you. And then the other thing I would say is that the literal location of the society is incredible.
Yeah.
And it's all in one location. So when you see the film, the magical society, that's one location in Los Angeles, and you walk in and it's just like, yep, you're in a magical society, you know, and that's fun, you know.
You know, I wish there were more of the magical Negroes at the headquarters complaining and, you know, workers about their particular clients, you know. That would be a scene I'd want to see.
All right, let's do it.
Just to switch gears for a second, I have to ask, of course, we're IMDb. This is going to be a hard question, y'all, but I believe we can do it. Tell me your favorite film of all time. And Justice, I have to start with you.
I have a couple. Right. Can I say my top 5?
Whatever you want.
I really love Boogie Nights by Paul Thomas Anderson.
Okay.
I really love Funny Games, the original Funny Games. Yeah. The Exorcist. I love horror, so my other film at Sundance is a horror film. So I'm having a miserable time promoting this one. No, I'm just kidding. I love Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, Gene Wilder.
Okay.
I love Parasite.
He said one movie.
Right.
I know, but please, I'm almost done. I'm almost done.
Give me one more. Just one more.
Wait, I think
Did you say 5?
I really like Spirited Away.
Okay. What did you like about it?
It's my like comfort movie.
We love that.
Yeah, it's my blanket movie.
No.
If you want to do, so I didn't know you love Funny Games. You should.
Funny Games is so good.
I want to do a double bill sometime of Funny Games and Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven, because they're my 2 favorite films about violence, and they have super different aesthetic approaches to critiquing violence. And I think watching those 2 films next to each other and thinking about that would be very interesting. So if anyone wants to set me up with a panel to do a double bill about those 2 films, I have thoughts. You know.
Right on. Mr. Grier, I have to know from you. What's your favorite film?
Man, why are you calling me Mr. Grier?
Okay, or David.
It was that
David,
story
I'm
that
just
did
so
it. He was like, damn, this went through slavery.
I just have so much respect.
Mr. Grier, Your Honor,
Like,
sir.
come on. I'm triggered.
Tell us how the Middle Passage was. You were there. Your old ass. Here's what I was thinking about when you're asking me about favorite movies. You know, as a child in the 60s, there were random black movies, but that was mostly when I was older. But what I don't think Hollywood or white Hollywood realizes is we put ourselves in them other movies any goddamn way. So I would watch The Wizard of Oz, and I'd be like, that's a little boy. That's a little black boy, and that's Detroit. And I want to see these munchkins. And when I was real little, I'd go to sleep, and I would try to wake up in Oz, you know. It never worked, but it was the power of fantasy, man, being carried away. One other movie. The setup is a movie. It's a B movie. It was done in, I think, the late 40s, black and white. It's about a shot fighter who's told to throw a fight. And, of course, we know he didn't throw the fight. And at the end, he beats this guy. And then the mobsters chase him into an alley, and they break his hands so he can never fight again. And the end of the movie is his girlfriend's crying, and he's crying because he's been released. Like he's free, you know. So that's one of mine. I love that movie.
Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Last one for you, Kobi. And we can leave this open-ended. What do we want after this film? Can maybe a sequel, maybe a trilogy, a franchise? What do you want after this?
You know, I just, the dream is just to get to tell stories that I think matter, you know, and it always feels like it's a little bit swimming uphill swimming uphill, walking uphill, swimming
That's
upstream.
close. That's
Stick
close.
with it.
Yeah.
Stick with it. Claim it.
I'm a writer.
Yeah, he is.
You know, just to tell something that you think matters, and so that's I hope I get to do that next. You know?
Right on. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our discussion. Let's give these talented group of men another round of applause. Woo! Thank you. Yes. Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah.
I loved it, but I'm afraid in France or when it gets to Europe, how does the white audience, is the white audience smart enough to laugh?
I hope so.
Yeah.
There's a lot of film. She's asking, if you can't hear her, she said, how does the white audience react to our film?
Yeah.
And do the white people that watch it feel they have a permission to laugh? And I'm
Right.
like, yeah. But there is that exchange where, like, I saw it with in an empty theater, you know, when I first saw the movie, and it was nothing but, you know, white people around me. And so every time I cracked up, all the white people be like, all right, put that down. That was funny. Laugh. They was laughing. He laughed too. You know,
Yeah.
no, laugh, man. You know, laugh.
Let me squeeze in one thing about this
Of
quickly.
course.
Yeah, on the subject of white people, about which I have thoughts. There's been a really interesting conversation around the film about the title of the film, and one of the first things I've heard a number of white people say is, "Well, am I allowed to say the title? How am I supposed to say the title?" A couple of things I think are interesting about this. One, I think it is interesting how quickly certain white audience members can center their own experience around a film instantly. I think that's interesting. The second thing is, when you see the film, one of the things you'll discover that it's about is a discrepancy in comfort moving through the world. Yes. That black people have a discomfort moving through, especially white spaces, that white people don't have, and there's a privilege to that for white people, obviously. And as a satirist, one of the things I was terrifically interested in was creating a moment of discomfort for white audiences immediately. That in any way to encounter this film, they have to be more uncomfortable than perhaps would be, but we're more comfortable in that situation. And the term for that, it's double consciousness, right? So we're doing this all the time, which is we're thinking about how a word will play just to my own brain, to my own ear, to my own community, and then also wondering how it's going to play to the white people around me, whom having to think in those two minds is a very new and agitating experience for white people. So that is to say, while I genuinely believe this is a film that every single person in the world can sit down and have a really meaningful experience with, because at the end of the day, it's just about a guy who has trouble speaking up for himself, who learns to speak up for himself. I think it's a really universal story. I think everybody can connect with that. That said, if white people experience discomfort around this film, I think it is a wonderful opportunity for building some empathy, because there's a discomfort we have moving through America as black people that, frankly, I don't think white people always know about.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I'm snapping on that one. Again, another round of applause for these amazing group of gentlemen up here. Thank you for coming out today.